And you made the decision to have the amputation, though. Like, how do you make that decision? How do you make such a serious decision to have part of your body removed? How do you get to that? I imagine it wasn't. Was it a quick decision? What was it?
Yeah. It was a really quick decision. It was like instantaneous. Like, I mean, like I woke up, my foot started spasming in this hard cast and I had to deal with it for so long. I was like, I'm gonna cut it off. I didn't do it quickly.
This is the Recovery After Stroke podcast with Bill Gassiamis, helping you navigate recovery after stroke.
Bill from recoveryafterstroke.com. This is episode 136, and my guest today is Sarah Curlee. Sarah experienced a stroke at age 27 that may have been caused by birth control or a hole in the heart, also known as a PFO. And a few years after the stroke, Sarah decided to have her foot amputated. This is a fascinating interview, so make sure you listen to the entire interview and get to the very end. Now, if you enjoy this episode and you think others should hear Sarah's story, please share it on your favorite social media platform, and also leave the Recovery After Stroke podcast a 5-star review on iTunes or your favorite podcast app. And if you're watching on YouTube, click the thumbs up button and subscribe to get notified of new episodes. By doing this, you will make it easier for other stroke survivors to find the Recovery After Stroke podcast, and it may just be making a huge difference for them, especially if they're in that early phase of stroke recovery where they're feeling alone and like nobody understands them and like they don't know anybody else who's been through what they've been through. So it would be very much appreciated if you did leave us a 5-star review so that the show can get ranked higher and also so that other people can find it. Now, thanks so much for listening to the podcast and for encouraging me to get to episode 136. It's a lot of work, but when I meet amazing people like Sarah, it makes it all the worthwhile, all the more while. And when people reach out and tell me how much they enjoyed a particular podcast or a particular episode, it really makes the whole thing even more worth it. So thank you for being here and listening. Thank you for the amazing feedback. And now it's on with the show. Sarah Curlee, welcome to the podcast.
Thanks.
Thank you so much for being here. Tell me a little bit about what happened to you.
So I had a right hemisphere ischemic stroke in August of 2013. And really quickly, I kind of want to know if you've ever heard anyone else have this backstory, just because kind of why I want to do this, because it's weird. So it's not, no one else has ever heard of this happening before. So please let me know if you know someone who's got this. So the stroke was on a Monday. I was at work. I was caught very quickly. Luckily, I had a friend come up and talk to me, and I thought I was answering him, but apparently I wasn't. And then he walks off, and I'm like, dude, I was like, where are you going? We're talking. And then it comes back with like a small army of people, and like they sit down with me and they get me to stop working. And like apparently my face was like really droopy. I don't know. No one took a picture, so I have no. I don't know what I don't know what I looked like. I don't know what prompted them to all just like everyone just go full like get her to the hospital mode. But I was lucky, and I got to the hospital within about 30 minutes of the stroke onset. I got TPA. So in the doctor's words, it took the blood clot size from a 9 out of 10 to a 6 out of 10 whenever I had the TPA.
Yep.
And then the neurosurgeon removed the blood clot later that day. And I woke up, I remember waking up on the operating table, fine. I was totally okay. Like, I remember asking the doctor questions, being like, hey, like, what's going on? Like, if you could clue me into why I've been here all day, that'd be really great. And the doctor just, like, kind of stared at me and didn't really know what to do with that, because apparently it's not common for a stroke survivor to wake up, like, fully cognizant. And so it was on a Monday, like I said, And then for the Tuesday and Wednesday, we did all the tests. We did the push-pull tests. We did all the cognitive tests, make sure speech was fine. Everything was fine. Like I passed every test with flying colors. And I remember like EMT would pop their heads in and they'd be like, are you really a stroke survivor, a young stroke survivor who's fine? Like no one could believe it. So I was out of the ICU by that Wednesday into the general ward. And then I left the hospital on Thursday with like nothing, with no rehab. Have you ever heard of that before?
Never heard of that before. So anyone who is listening to this episode, whoever is listening to this episode, whoever is on Instagram, whoever is anywhere in social media world, do us a favor, get in touch with Sarah at Instagram and let her know if you're one of these people that had a stroke and then woke up and went home and everything was back to normal and there was no...
Well, not back to normal, but we thought it was going to be. I was supposed to be okay.
Okay.
I was like a miracle child.
They missed your diagnosis wasn't complete and then they sent you home and you missed out on all of the opportunities to go through rehab and all those types of things.
Yeah, I never got any of it. My brother's actually, his wedding was like a week later. I went to it, I was in it and everything. And then, so everything was fine. And then I got doctor permission to start working out again 2 weeks after my stroke. And he had no reason to say no. So I started kickboxing again 2 weeks after my stroke. And then it took about 2 or 3 sessions before I started to actually, I amputated my foot. I know that's why we're talking, is because I amputated my foot. We'll get to it at some point in this. But my arm was actually the first one to start to like feel residuals. Like I would hit the bag and my left arm was dragging. I describe it as like having a bunch of tiny little rubber bands just like holding it back. And so I started working again about a month after my stroke. Again, no clue what was going on. I'm an analytical chemist, so like I reviewed that all day. So I'm at a computer a lot. My hand was not working for the typing or anything like that. So like I just stopped typing with it. Like I just stuck to my right hand. I went and I had tons of follow-up appointments to like figure out what caused the stroke. Birth control and a hole in my heart are the 2 main contributing factors as a PFO. PFO got fixed. And I can't be on birth control anymore. So theoretically we should be fine in that aspect. But I remembered showing everyone my hand. Like I would play piano, like I'd do like piano, and then like I'd be like, it doesn't do it anymore. It did it better back then, but I'd be like do a little piano. It was like slowed down quite a bit, and like my neurosurgeon like literally shrugged his shoulders. He's just like, oh, okay. And then I had another follow-up appointment with my GP that I was assigned, and by then my foot did start to take over. My foot started to, I never had to describe this in words without having a visual. So for the podcast's sake, foot should be flat. It started to turn on its outside and then turn inward, and then my toes would hammer. So it was like becoming a club foot. And my ankle would start to give and it would start to give. So whenever I saw my GP, we focused mainly on that because I couldn't really not walk. Like I needed to be able to walk. I could function without the hand. I kind of needed to walk. So she actually referred me to an orthopedic surgeon. And I met with him and he wanted to do a surgery on me. I mean, that was his solution to fixing the foot. And we did some rehab. Well, there was actually not rehab. We did some physical therapy in the meantime. Because it was spasming. Like it was like a foot spasm, like all day, every day, like constantly. And so it took about a year before I finally walked myself enough stress fractures and I've been in a walking cast. I was like, all right, let's do the surgery. Let's do it. It's going to fix everything, right? Because Google even said that it was going to fix everything. Every other orthopedic surgeon said it was going to fix everything. I was like, all right, we'll just do it. That's fine. And then I'll be okay. And I wasn't at all. I actually made it like 10 times worse.
So the surgery made it more painful and more,
more
difficult to walk.
Yeah, it made it way worse. I've never really found a good way to describe the pain, but it hurt.
Yeah.
And then so what he did was to help control the spasticity. And at this point, I didn't know that's what it was yet. I hadn't had a diagnosis yet because I hadn't even seen a neurologist yet. But to control the spasticity, what he did was he cut the tendon that goes down the outside of my left leg and cut it in two, reattached half of it where it was, so on the outside of my foot, and then took the other half and attached it to the inside of my foot to help like straighten it back out. And then he did that same thing with the tendon going down the front of my leg, cut it in half, put half of it back where it started, and the other half on the inside. And so I woke up from the surgery in a hard cast, and I looked down. I was like, okay, this is okay. And then it spasmed really badly for like 4 or 5 months, and it really sucked.
What's that like? Because people go through this, and there's not a lot spoken about what it's like to feel spasms and to feel spasticity. How do you cope with it for 4 or 5 months after you thought you fixed it? What does it do to you emotionally and mentally?
It's demoralizing. I mean, I don't think I coped with it at all. I mean, physically, I would tape my toes to the hard cast to try to get to stop spasming.
Wow.
Mentally and emotionally, I still don't think to this day I've really processed how much pain it caused. But I do know I woke up and spasmed, and I was like, I'm gonna cut it off. I'm like, it's just gonna have to go. Like, I mean, it was like, I mean, everyone at this point has had a muscle spasm in their life. Imagine that, like, all day, every day, 24/7, 365. Like, you can't get it to stop. You don't know why. And so finally the hard cast came off, and the orthopedic surgeon saw my foot and saw that it was actually like back to being crooked. And then I got my neurologist referral. So that's when I found out that it was spasticity and dystonia. Those were my post-stroke diagnoses.
Wow. That's
Um,
I'll give you a little bit of I did get misdiagnosed or not treated properly. I felt after the second time my brain bled. So it bled in 2012
mhm,
in February, and then it bled in March. And in March, I went home and I didn't know who had visited me. I couldn't type an email. I couldn't finish a sentence.
mhm,
I was getting stuck with words. I couldn't drive. I couldn't do anything. I was extremely fatigued. And the only thing I knew to do, because I had been seeing a counselor before that, was to go and see my counselor and continue those appointments.
mhm,
And when I got to the counselor, I think it was about a month after I'd been discharged the second time, excuse me, my counselor, my psychologist said, "Have you seen a neuropsychologist?" And I
ooh,
and I said, "What's that?" Like, I don't know what that is. And she said, "Well, it's somebody that's going to assess you to see where you're at cognitively and what you can and can't do." And I said,
mhm.
"Oh no, I didn't know that they existed."
Yeah, I didn't know that
Okay,
was the thing. That's cool.
all right, I'll go. And we tried to make an appointment, and the appointment, it took about 6 months to get an appointment with a neuropsychologist because,
Mhm,
again, I didn't realize that I could pay up front to go and see somebody instead of waiting through our public hospital system to get a referral and go see somebody. I didn't
mhm,
realize that I could just go and pay. So we waited. So in that time, I was zoned out. I was zonked out. I didn't know what was happening to me most of the time. I had a lot of fatigue. I had a lot of spaced out moments where I didn't know where I was in the world and what was happening. I was kind of in this in this kind of like a drugged phase of my life. Like, it was really bizarre. So
mhm.
that's the most that I can relate to what you're saying, in that you went home and everyone thought you were perfectly fine, whereas, and you went back to kickboxing and all that kind of stuff. I went home and they thought I was perfectly fine. They didn't refer me to anybody,
Mhm.
but I struggled a lot with just being normal and being able to
Yeah.
be in the world. So I think that's part of why I do this podcast. It's so that other people whose loved ones have had a stroke, and when you've had the stroke, you're not the one that can make the decision, the rational decision or the correct decision about your health and well-being.
Yeah.
It's so that loved ones or caregivers can perhaps stumble across one of these episodes and go, well, I need to ring this person, or I need to follow up on this, or I need to do that for my loved one. So is that similar to how it happened to you? Do you feel like you kind of slipped through the cracks and missed important conversation somewhere?
Yeah, that's probably the best way to describe it. I mean, once you're out of the system, at least where I was living, once I was out of the system, I was never able to get in. Like I told doctors constantly what was happening, and I was constantly looking for questions, and I was actively seeking out answers from the people that I thought had the answers, and no one could ever tell me what was wrong. Like no one could ever tell me what to do. I mean, they were all more than willing to open my foot back up and keep doing surgeries on it. But every single one, I gave them the same question. I was like, can you take the pain away? None of them said yes. So I was like, I'm not doing that again. I was like, I'm not putting myself through that kind of pain again.
If you've had a stroke and you're in recovery, you'll know what a scary and confusing time it can be. You're likely to have a lot of questions going through your mind. Like, how long will it take to recover? Will I actually recover? What things should I avoid in case I make matters worse? Doctors will explain things, but obviously you've never had a stroke before. You probably don't know what questions to ask. If this is you, you may be missing out on doing things that could help speed up your recovery. If you're finding yourself in that situation, stop worrying and head to recoveryafterstroke.com, where you can download a guide that will help you. It's called 7 Questions to Ask Your Doctor About Your Stroke. These 7 questions are the ones Bill wished he'd asked when he was recovering from a stroke. They'll not only help you better understand your condition, they'll help you take a more active role in your recovery. Head to the website now, recoveryafterstroke.com, and download the guide. It's free.
And you made the decision to have the amputation, though. Like, how do you make that decision? How do you make such a serious decision to have part of your body removed? How do you get to that? I imagine it wasn't. Was it a quick decision? What was it?
Yeah. It was a really quick decision. It was like instantaneous. Like, I mean, like I woke up, my foot started spasming in this hard cast and I had to deal with it for so long. I was like, I'm going to cut it off. I didn't do it quickly. So my stroke was in August of 2013, and my mom was diagnosed with cancer in October of 2013. So she had to fight for her life and all that. And I wasn't going to put myself in a position where I could possibly ruin my life and not be able to get to her whenever I needed, because we lived 2 states away. So like I wasn't going to venture down that road until I was ready, until she was ready. And ultimately what made her ready was she did pass away in December of 2015. Sorry, I have my notes written down, so I don't read these dates.
Okay.
She passed away in December of 2015. So in between September-ish of 2014 and December of 2015, I did all the research, and I did the Botox. That is apparently very common. It didn't work. I talked to all orthopedic surgeons. They all gave me the exact same answers. I did a lot of research on amputations and what all like was out there and what all. If I really want to know if anyone else had ever amputated because of something like that, and I couldn't find anything, so I didn't really have any knowledge base for if it would work. And it was a huge risk, and I knew it was a huge risk. But once she passed away, I went ahead and just blindsided my whole family and all my friends with the decision to amputate the foot. Because I didn't talk to anyone about it. Like I didn't tell anyone what I was going to, because again, I was supposed to be okay. Like I wasn't supposed to have to be dealing with that kind of stuff. And like, I don't share well. You're actually the first person I've ever talked to about this.
Well, thank you.
7 years later. So yeah. Yeah. So like, it's just like 7 years later, I just now am like actually like sharing any of this. So I blindsided everyone. Like my whole family was just like, what? They're like, you're going to do what? And I mean, they were all supportive. They're totally okay with it. And once my mom passed and I got through all that, I got back into Nashville, and I actually met, I met someone at the gym, and we bonded through our crutches. because I was on crutches at that point in time, just because like I was on and off crutches, I was in and out of an air cast, I was in and out of an AFO, I was doing all that. And he was like, he told me his story, and I told him my story, and he's like, but I'm gonna cut mine off. I'm like, who, what, when, where, why, and how? I want one. I was like, I've been wanting this for like over a year now. And he gave me his doctor's name and number, and this was like 2 seconds after I got back in Nashville, got life going again. I met the doctor, and he was a great guy. He's a vascular surgeon. He gave me my options, and it just, everything he was saying made so much sense, and everything was just so aligned with what I was wanting out of my life. I wanted my life back, and it is unfortunate that my mom had to pass away to be able to start the journey. But once she did pass away, I was able to start looking for ways to get normal again, to get happy again, to get out of my depression and funk and just the hate of life. But I met with the prosthesis. He actually runs a charity out in Nashville called Amputated Learners. I got very lucky with that as well. I talked to him, and I was like, can I wear heels again? And I was like, can I run? Not again, but can I run in general? Because you always want what you can't have, you know? I was like, I can't run. Now I want to. He unfortunately remembered that I asked that question and made me run. But, but yeah, and I amputated it. I amputated it in May 9th of 2016. And in hindsight, there was a lot of morphine involved in my happiness at the very beginning, but I had no pain. Like, I was pain free. Like, I was just like so happy and so relieved. And like, once the morphine wore off, it took a little while to get back to that point. But like, I was just so relieved that I didn't have anything spasming. Like, the pain was gone.
Wow.
Like, that, and you have to do inpatient rehab for 2 weeks whenever you amputate. That's the first time we ever even focused on my hand. Like, I was so ready for this amputation. Like, they didn't have anything they had to do with me for the foot. Like, I was already like pelicaning, like flamingoing, whatever, more often than not. Anyways, like, I already took myself off of my left side as it was. So I was so prepared for it just naturally that we spent the whole time focusing on my hand and working with it and trying to figure out how to like get it stretched out and how to figure out how to like get it functional again if we even could. But yeah, it was the most serendipitous thing I think I've ever experienced in my life.
Wow. It's
Yeah.
absolutely fascinating that the thing that has made a difference to your life more than anything after all these experiences that you've had is the amputation, and that improved your quality of life. I've got a friend who is a double amputee, and he was about 19 and experienced a condition that was called, I can't remember right now, but I will remember it in a little bit. And as a result of meningococcal, and as a result of that, the bacteria attacks the extremities of the limbs. He's lost a couple of fingers, and it impacted one of his legs severely, and he had to have an amputation. And then it impacted his other leg as well, but not severely enough to need an amputation, but severely enough to cause a lot of pain and a lot of problems. So he had one leg which was amputated and had a prosthetic, and the other one was just really painful and not really supporting him and able to allow him to get back to his life. So he decided that he would also have that one amputated.
Yeah.
And now he's a double amputee at the legs. And as he arranged it so that he was amputated, his leg was amputated in the same spot, so that he has really good balance. And now he's able to use amazing prosthetic limbs and walk properly and have no difficulties getting around and being active and playing golf and doing all the things that he loved to do. I interviewed him for the podcast a few years ago, and what I'll do is I'll put a link in the show notes of the podcast episode with Mike Rolls, and if anyone's interested and curious about Mike, they can check him out at mikerolls.com.au. So it's MIKEROLLS.com.au, but all those links will be in the show notes. He's a fascinating guy. Now he does some public speaking, and he goes around Australia teaching, helping other amputee survivors, and he's just a great guy. He's just an amazing guy, absolutely amazing. He was the first person I met who said that he was, made the decision to have one of his own limbs amputated. You're the second person, so it seems like it's probably rare, and there's not many people doing that. But it's great that both of you have had an amazing positive outcome after doing something so drastic and what other people would say is really dramatic, and how could you possibly cut your own leg off type thing.
Yeah. It's kind of interesting because I don't have a percentage or anything, but a lot of amputees are elective. Like a lot of us had something happen in life that we obviously didn't want to have happen, and we had the choice of keeping the limb and keeping the lower quality of life, or removing the limb and having a higher quality of life. It's not as uncommon as I think most people realize.
Right.
And I didn't really realize it until I started meeting other amputees, and they say like they could have kept their limb and they chose not to. It's actually quite common. I actually know a double amputee as well, and he was born with a genetic defect. I can't remember the name of it. It's not even tip of my tongue, but he ended up amputating both of his legs as well, and his quality of life went through the roof as well. I mean, it's all about the mindset, I mean, no one ever wants to have a stroke. No one ever chooses to have a stroke. So it's a very depressing mindset. Like it's really hard to come back from. It's really hard to move on with life, knowing what life was before. And it's just not something that you would ever wish upon anyone. You never wish an amputation upon anyone, but if you choose to amputate, it's a just completely different set of rules on the whole.
It's empowering.
Yeah, it is. It's very empowering. It is. Yeah. And it's just like when it works, it's a huge emotional release. I mean, huge emotional. And then you can move on with life. And prosthetics are great nowadays. I mean, we've come a long way from the wooden legs. So, I mean, it's so impressive. I have 3 feet now, actually. I have one for heels because Aaron with amputee blade runners was kind enough to remember that question. And then I have one for like everyday usage. It's got good ankle flexing. It's so I do get like a bit of an ankle. So I have that kind of
movement.
Yes, thank you. Words are sorry. And then I have a running blade. He did remember I asked about running. But actually, after I amputated, I started walking a month after my amputation, and I started running 2 months after my amputation. I ran 2 half marathons and a Ragnar all within a year and a half of amputating. I have confirmed I'm not the biggest fan of running. And I actually did a lot of damage to my upper limb. Like my arm, I lost a lot of more mobility than I was already losing, and so it's not worth it for me to keep running. I still use it at the gym a lot to do like sled pulls and stuff like that. Anything that requires like a little faster movement, but I don't run much. I don't run at all anymore. But I mean, I couldn't have ever done any of that with my real foot. I could barely walk without a cane and with my real foot.
I get it.
So,
it makes
yeah.
complete sense. I totally get it. Well done for doing it and going down that path. Have you ever stopped for a moment to consider the birth control issue? I know that you're about the 4th woman or 5th woman I've interviewed who has seemingly been completely normal and healthy, and at a very young age, below 30 or even somewhere near 30, had a stroke, and the only thing that they could put it down to was that they were taking birth control. Is that something that plays on your mind? Is it a conversation that you've had with more people to get to the bottom of that?
I think it is an incredibly important piece of information for everyone who's ever going to, because birth control, I got put on when I was like 12, all for the same thing that most people that age get put on. I mean, I'm a preteen with hormones. Like it's just, periods are incredibly painful. So they put you on birth control at such a young age. I was 27 when I had the stroke. So do the math on how many years that is. I can't remember. But like, and it comes with the warning labels, but we don't know to read them. Like we're kids. Our parents don't know to read them because they just want us to not be in pain once a month. Like, and they're happy at the results that they see. And obviously we're not trying to get pregnant if we're on birth control. So like it has so many benefits, but you never realize that the risks are high. And as actually there's actually an episode of Oprah Winfrey's show, and I've never seen it, but she has like a ton of stroke survivors on her show. All had strokes, and their main reason was birth control.
Wow.
So I don't remember. I used to know the percentage. I can't remember the percentage of birth control caused strokes, but it's higher than it should be. And then having that hole in my heart as well. The general theory is that the clot started in my legs, and instead of going down into my lungs like it should have, it pushed through the hole and went up into my brain.
Right.
And I mean, that could have easily been solved with a bubble test. I'm just like, so a bubble test is whenever they shoot saline into your heart, and then if the saline stays where it's supposed to, you don't have a hole. If the saline moves into another chamber, you have a hole. But I'm just like, at least like do some, like, check a poor little girl who's about to start on birth control and make sure that she doesn't have any kind of pre-existing condition that could cause further problems down the road. It's really unfortunate how much it's not talked about. I've never really talked to anyone about it, but I don't really know how to talk to. I don't know who to talk to. I don't know how to talk to people in general. So,
Oh, you're doing all right for somebody who doesn't know how to talk to people.
yeah, I wrote up a rubric, so I have my talking points, so I don't ramble too much. But yeah,
That's all good. That's all good. Look, I thought I'd ask. I'm just so stunned about it. I keep meeting more and more women who have said the same thing, and I can't believe it. I just cannot believe it, and I figure that somebody needs to do something about it or say something about it. And I'm very surprised. I didn't know that there was an Oprah special on it or something like that. And that was done, though, just Googled it here, and it was done in October of 2011. That was when she made a point of it and did this particular show about it. So it's been a while, and I dare say that there wouldn't be too many people moving to make any kind of change because the perceived benefit of birth control, I'm assuming in society, is far greater than the perceived risk of stroke. And even though people who have a stroke and were on birth control, it's still not definitive that they had the stroke because of the birth control.
Correct.
And that's kind of that's how they get out of saying, well, lots of things cause strokes, we don't know, and not necessarily the birth control, although there is a warning label on birth control that does say it does increase the possibility of stroke.
Yeah, and I mean, every environmental factor can be thrown into what can cause a stroke. I mean, a lot of strokes are perfect storms. I mean, you have everything fall into the right spot to have a stroke. Like, if we go farther down, like dehydration was a concern of that for the stroke. They tried to say kickboxing was part of the reason I had a stroke. Like, there was a laundry list of reasons why I possibly had the stroke. It's just those were the top two. But you're right. I mean, with so many other different factors that can play into having a stroke, you can never pin it on just birth control.
No, you can't. And
but it really should come with a giant red warning label instead of like a tiny, like in the middle of a blurb warning label.
Yeah, I agree with you. So your mum passed away at the same time when you're recovering from stroke, when you're suffering and struggling through all these other issues as well. That I'm going to make a bloody obvious statement, but obviously it was hard. I know it was hard.
Yeah.
How do you get through it though? Like, how do you overcome all the shit that you've got to deal with at the same time in your life, and you're fairly young, and like most people who are below 30 don't have a lot of experience in overcoming such emotionally difficult times as well? Throw a stroke into the mix. Like, how did you get through? What did you need to do to overcome and get through?
I kept busy. I cried a lot. I have a dog. I know it's not the same as, but like my dog is like literally the definition of an emotional support animal. Like, she was like the sole reason that I ever even remotely wanted to continue trying. Because, I mean, my mom was failing daily. And she was actually the only one I ever really talked to about anything. So, like, it was really great to have her support because we would just sit there and talk about our failing bodies. And, like, so I at least had her to talk to about it. I didn't talk to anyone else about it, especially my family. I didn't want them to know what I was going through. Whenever we had her to worry about. I just, a lot of crying, a lot of crying. And I mean, I threw myself back into work. I was working like 70-hour day, no, not days, whoa, like 70-hour weeks. Whenever I was needed, like, I would just work a lot. I would try to get out there and be normal. I stayed active in the gym for sure. To this day, the gym is easily like my happy place. If I'm not on the top of a mountain or headed to the top of a mountain with Kaya, I tried not to think about it.
Mm.
Failed more often than not, but tried not to think about it. And pre-amputation, I didn't have any other option but to just ignore it as much as I could because I had no solution to the problem. And then once I amputated, or once my mom passed, once I amputated, that's whenever I was finally able to figure out how to be happy again. But I definitely spent the 2-ish years just in a funk, like depressed, anxious, didn't know anyone to talk to, had no one to like tell what was going on, didn't even have an answer to what was going on. I don't know.
You seem like a pretty outgoing person. I can't believe you didn't have anyone to talk to. Is it because you chose not to, or because you're just not you're not that kind of person? How is it that you didn't have anyone to talk to? I find that amazing that people say that. I get that they say it, and I understand how they say it and how they might get to that point. But I find it fascinating that you're one person and you're surrounded with people wherever you live, unless you're in a remote location, and you felt like you had no one to talk to about it. Was that true, or was it just something that you imagined that you didn't have anyone to talk about?
I isolated. I isolated. I'm not going to say willingly, but I mean, it's probably more subconscious than anything. My significant other at the time was a rock. He was great throughout the whole thing. The stroke ended up causing a lot of arguments because he wanted life to go back to normal. And again, I was supposed to be fine. So life was supposed to go back to normal. So a lot of arguments about that because I couldn't go back to normal. I couldn't go back to like being a social butterfly. Well, I was never a social butterfly. Like going out places with him and like doing all these things that we were doing pre-stroke. So I bottled up on that end. And then the stroke ultimately ended up ending us because I couldn't talk to him about it. And then at work, again, I was supposed to be fine. So no one knew what was going on. And once there was actually one time that I had a cane. I have a 4-prong cane. I love my cane. I think she's awesome. And I would break her out whenever I needed to back when I had my real foot because it would hurt. And so there was one day I needed my cane back. And so I broke it back out and I was at work with it. And like one of my coworkers like literally pointed and laughed. I actually, that day I had just found out that my mom got diagnosed with stage 4 cancer. Like, so it was a really bad day. Like I didn't leave the bathroom for like 2 hours. Like I was in there crying for like 2 hours. But like I would hone in on things like that. And I would hone in on my behavior and my attitude and how like I was just so unhappy and I would get snippy because of it. And like so I just opted to not talk to anyone. Like it was easier that way. It was easier to not share than it was to share, especially since I still didn't know what was wrong. I still didn't know how to fix it. And I wish I had sought out answers on how to make it better before knowing how to make it better. Does that make sense?
Makes sense, complete sense. And that's why I questioned you on how do you feel alone. And I kind of knew what you were going to say, but people listening and watching this are going to definitely feel alone, and they might recognize something in you that they haven't recognized in themselves. and they might be able to say, okay, I've got to do something about this situation that I'm in, and maybe the feeling of being alone is just a creation in your own mind. And I get how rude could somebody possibly be by pointing at your cane and laughing? That's such a
She
ridiculous.
just thought the rudeness was not intended. I know
I
that,
know
but
it's still rude, and
yeah,
and
it
then
wasn't
came to that.
nice.
That makes sense that you would retract from interactions with people because you're trying to protect yourself and you're trying to keep yourself from being, further emotionally impacted.
Yeah,
Not only are you going
yeah.
through a stroke, your mum's unwell, and there's people laughing at your cane. Like, ridiculous. How stupid.
Yeah, it's in hindsight, actually, if I had known it was gonna be like a social study, amputating my foot, I really would have documented this better. But back when I was in my air cast, strangers would walk up to me like all the time, be like, "Oh my gosh, what happened? What did you do? How did you hurt yourself?" And I never had to answer that. I was always like, I had surgery. But no one ever cared about my answer anyways. They always wanted to tell me their story on how they ended up in an air cast, on how they ended up with 2 air casts, how they like fell off a mountain skiing and how they ended up breaking both their feet. And like everyone just wanted to tell me their story because it was so relatable, right? And I amputated the foot. Very rarely do I get asked what happened. Like more
Wow.
often than not, I get people who stare at me for sure. And it's kind of funny because now I want to talk about it. Now I'm like, ask me, I want to tell you because I'm ready to tell you. But I wish I had used that time in that air cast as a chance to talk about it. Like I wish I had been honest and been like, I had a stroke. Like I had a stroke and I'm not like I can't walk without this or I can't walk without the AFO. And I could have at least practiced on strangers what to say to people that I knew and people that I cared about. And then instead of I was pushing them away, instead I was actually like avoiding them because couldn't talk about it. Like I really wish I had practiced on strangers, I guess.
But that's
But
a
yeah,
great
it's
thing
kind
that you learnt now. I mean, it's a great thing to reflect on and to share now, because people listening right now might go, okay, let me test out my
yeah.
sub story on somebody I don't know who I'm never going to see again.
Exactly. Some random person in a grocery store, tell them your whole life. I mean, hey, it's good practice.
If they're
But yeah.
curious enough to ask, they're going to have to listen to the answer. That's it.
Exactly. That is true. I had to listen to their stories. They have to listen to yours. It's true. It's very true.
And isn't it amazing that questioning is a way to open up an opportunity for them to tell you what happened to them so that they can
Yeah.
get it off their chest, and they don't they don't really give a shit about you, do
Yeah.
they? They really
Yeah.
don't.
I would always say I'm just gonna like say like something funny like I saved a cat from a burning building or something like that. Like I never actually did it because I don't know, I couldn't ever get the words out because I'm not that eloquent with words. But now that I actually tell the truth on the rare occasion someone will ask me what happened to my foot, more people ask me about my hand in general, but like I'll always answer with I had a stroke. And that's weird enough apparently. Everyone's just like, oh, I don't know what that means. Or they're like, oh, you were so young. And I'm like, yeah, I was 27 when I had it. And then it's just awkward silence. And then I walk away from the stranger. But I practiced. So yeah. So, I mean, it's just such a strange answer as it is. So it very rarely leads to follow-up questions. I love it when it leads to follow-up questions. And those are some of my favorite conversations. But it just doesn't happen that often. So apparently I had the weird story all along. I just never knew it. Like, so.
You sure do.
Yeah.
When I just before my surgery, I was really eating really well. No sugar, no gluten, no dairy, um, no alcohol. And of course, when you go to a party and you're not having any of that stuff, and people are offering you cake and alcohol and all that, they ask you unknowingly, "Oh, how come you're not drinking?" or "How come you're not eating cake?" or whatever. And then I got to that point where at some stage I started telling them, and you could tell they regret asking me about
Yeah.
45 minutes later. And they're trying to be polite and not get out of the
Yeah.
conversation. And I said,
Yeah.
"Do you know, I had a stroke." "Yeah, yeah. And it bled and this happened and that happened and they cut my head open and they did all of that stuff." And people are just sitting there going, "Geez, I wish I'd never asked that question." And I can tell that they're thinking that, but they're too polite to walk away, and they're people that
I kind of know through other people. So it was, not the right time for them to walk away and get out of it. But I didn't do it to annoy them or upset them or anything like that. I did them because I think like you, I felt like it was time to start sharing. And I think I felt like they were old enough to have a stroke, the people that were asking me. So maybe I was kind of raising awareness about it. And I wanted to tell them that I stopped smoking, and I wanted to tell them that I stopped drinking because, like you, I did have the perfect storm, but I think I created the perfect storm myself. So I did all these little things that did lead to that weak blood vessel in my head finally going, we can't cope anymore. I'm going to bleed out, And then I started to take control back of my health and well-being, and I was proud of that. So I wanted to tell people that that's what I was doing.
You should be proud of that. That's so great.
And
as long you have such a positive mindset as well, that's so great. It's hard to have a positive mindset after having something like that happen. It's so much easier to just fall in a black hole.
Yeah, well, I did. I shared that story as well on episode 100. I interviewed my wife, and at the time, a week or two before my surgery, her mum passed away. So we were going through her mum's passing, and then we were preparing for the funeral. And at the same time, we were preparing for potentially life-altering brain surgery. And it was just a real shit time in every way, shape, and form. And if you didn't have a positive mindset, even in the midst of all the distress and the depression and the anxiety and the bad feelings and the bad emotions, if you didn't have a positive mindset, I don't know how we would have got through it. We had 2 kids. You can't just collapse in a heap, and it doesn't work. There's too much going on to do that. So what's the solution? The solution for me was just to find ways to have a positive impact on my own life. And for me, it wasn't an amputation, but I can so relate to what you said about how you chose amputation. It seemed like the harder path, but it was the path that gave you back your life. And that's kind of what I did. I chose what appeared to be like the harder path. And for some people would appreciate this, stopping alcohol is a hard path for some people. But for me, that was easy, because now that that's done, I can just go back to not having to worry about, am I again creating the perfect storm to have another stroke? And if I have another stroke, how much worse is it going to be than what it is now? Because it's not going to be better.
How old were you when you had your stroke or your bleed?
I was 37.
Okay.
And working 16 hours a day and 2 kids and wife and mortgage and cars and all the shit, right? And then it was like, everyone I know around me is doing exactly what I'm doing. Like, they are a candidate for having the same experience that I'm having. And maybe by me sharing my story, they'll just pay attention a little bit and reconsider a couple of things. I don't know what, but maybe they won't, but maybe they will. I don't know. So it's kind of where I was coming from. And also I was getting used to being public about it and getting used to my next phase, getting prepared for my next phase, which was to do the podcast and to do, stroke recovery coaching, and to do YouTube videos and to do Instagram lives, so it was kind of my proving ground. It was, I got those suckers involved, so I could practice my message or story or whatever.
Yeah. And how long ago did you start this podcast? I tried to find it. I couldn't really get an answer.
I started it in 2015, and I didn't do a lot of episodes back then. I was only doing probably, maybe 3 or 4 episodes every few months. And it really ramped up in the last 3 years or so, where I've been doing about an episode a week. So I'm close to about doing 50 or so episodes a year. And at the beginning, it was called the Transit Lounge Podcast. And I was just interviewing random people about different things that they'd overcome. And then there was some cancer survivors. And then there was a lady who overcome multiple sclerosis, and there was Mike Rolls, who I mentioned earlier, who had the double amputation. So I was just interviewing people about having overcome things, but then I realized that actually my real passion and my real community and the people that I related to, who related to me the most, were stroke survivors. So I changed it about a year and a half ago, 2 years ago, and I called it the Recovery After Stroke podcast. And it took off from there.
I tried my hardest after my stroke to find something like this or find a support group or anything like that. So, and I never found one. So what you're doing is really very impressive. I mean, everyone who's been through something like we've been through wants to find someone out there who they can talk to and relate to and know that they're not alone. And it's great that you have a platform that you're reminding us and letting us all know that we're not alone, or telling us in the first place that we're not alone. Because it's scary in and of itself, but the idea that you think that you can't ever talk to anyone and have them understand what you're talking about makes it scarier, trying to get life back on track. So it's great that you're doing this.
I was seeking out anyone near me that had a stroke that I could relate to, but the people I was meeting were all older than me. And then I did meet a few locals that were younger than me, and we kind of did relate. But then I think the main reason I did the podcast was so I can meet other people that I related to, so I wouldn't feel alone. And so I would feel like somebody understood me and knew what I was going through, even though they were on the other side of the planet. It didn't really matter. So now I've met 130 stroke survivors who have shared their story on the podcast, who are like me, similar to me, understand me, and I don't feel so alone. And when I reach out to them on Instagram and ask, silly questions, I get a heap of answers. People will respond.
I love those answers. Oh, I love that you ask those questions. I spend
more
more time reading your comments than any other comments on Instagram.
It's fascinating to me that people would want to respond, and I'm glad that they do, because it then makes Instagram worth being on. Just today I put another post out and I asked, what is something that stroke caused that you would pay anything to make better or go away? I'm really looking forward to what people have to say about that. And
I'll answer it when we're done with this.
Yeah. And they're already on there. I only posted it 10 minutes before we got onto this episode, and they're already on there leaving, comments like neurofatigue. It's hard to explain to somebody. And I guess to someone it sounds made up, but it's very real. Similar to a migraine, I often feel like I need to lie down in a dark room with no external stimuli to feel better. People are just posting. There's like already 10 comments on there, and I just posted it, I don't know, 40 minutes ago or 50 minutes ago. So I love that I can do that, and I get a lot from it, but the people who comment get a lot from it, and I'm so glad that you're one of them.
Yeah. Mine's chronic pain. To answer that, I really wish the chronic pain would go away. Your questions, I mean, they're such great conversation starters. And so there's a stroke survivor support group in Nashville now. I actually found them because I ran a 5K for them after I amputated, obviously. But it's called Seriously Awesome Stroke Survivors. But she was Trista is actually she's never had a stroke. She's just your last podcast with Peter. He was talking about something that now I can't remember what it was, but it made me think of Trista. On how she's never had a stroke, but she's sitting here trying to help everyone who has, and how she's just like this most selfless person to like want to help someone when she doesn't actually personally know what they're going through. But I met a lot of stroke survivors through them. But yeah, same thing. They were all older. I still never met many younger stroke survivors. But they were all such amazing people, though, and it was great to be able to share the stories on a personal level. But that's actually why I started my Instagram, was to find other stroke survivors as well. So I guess I probably found you about a year ago. So I guess right around the time you changed to recovering from stroke. Yeah,
something like that. It makes sense. That's when it kind of really took off. Peter G. Levine was episode 135. So he's the episode just before you. I just released that today, and it's going to go live. it's live already. And he's a clinical researcher, and he and his family and his wife, and I don't know how many people he knows, are all involved in helping other people overcome brain injuries and recover from stroke and all that kind of stuff. And I'm like, why would you do that? I think it's so fascinating that that's the path that they choose and they go down. And when I met people like that in Melbourne, in my hometown, I again didn't feel like I was alone, because there was thousands of researchers doing work at institutes and at these hospitals to help people like us. It's such an amazing thing. I find it fascinating.
I didn't realize that until that podcast that I knew Australia had the Stroke Foundation. I follow them on Instagram, but I didn't realize that Australia was so passionate about strokes and figuring out what causes them, how to make people better after them. And I don't know if the US has much like that. Honestly, if they do, I haven't ever heard about it. So
yeah,
I think the US is still stumbling through most of it. So
yeah, there are a lot of researchers that are working and doing amazing work in the US. And especially I think it's the Heart and Stroke Foundation in the US that does really good work in that space. But there'll be a ton of bodies that are really focusing on neurological interventions, or how to help people having neurological issues. You know what's really bad about what they do? They don't do a real good job of advertising themselves and of letting people know that they exist. So that's because they're so focused on rehabilitation and learning new things and, discovering new discoveries, they're not really good at telling people about the things that they've discovered. And when they do discover them, they their version of Instagram or whatever is some medical journal that only doctors read.
Yeah, trying to get through one of those is impossible. Like I didn't even know what neuroplasticity was until like within the last few years, and that's something that they've apparently known about forever, and they didn't ever put it in a easily read Instagram post.
Yeah.
Like it's just like our attention spans are like shorter and shorter the more modern day becomes more like overwhelming with all the information out there. Our attention spans are too short to read that long of a post.
Yeah. So that's pretty much why I would say we don't know about them. And, I've never really been interested in neurological stuff until I had a stroke, and then I needed to know all about the neurological stuff. So I started to really focus and try and research. But back then, when you and I had our stroke, it was early days. It was really early days, 2012. There was nothing around, and I was looking everywhere for that stuff.
I was too. Yeah, there was nothing.
Yeah. So that's kind of what instigated me to get my act together and get the ball rolling on my podcast. Now, I'm curious though, how's the future looking for you? What's coming up that's exciting that you'll be doing or going to continue to do? How are things evolving now?
So I moved to Utah to do the things that I want to do. Nashville is great and I loved it. It's just like I had to drive 3 hours for a hike. And ABR, amputee belly runners, were phenomenal in getting me up and running. But Utah has this place out here called the National Ability Center. And what they do is they work with people with disabilities or PTSD and help them either get into outdoor rec or get back into outdoor rec. And so pre-stroke, I dabbled in snowboarding, sucked at it, dabbled in mountain biking, terrified me. But now that I'm post-stroke and post-amputation, like I can start doing these things again, I'm like, I want to go out and do this. And so actually the double amputee that I was talking about earlier posted his experience with the NAC, and I already wanted to move out to this coast anyways, because humidity is like the worst thing ever, like Nashville has. So I actually targeted Utah so that I could work with them, and I started snowboarding with them. I found out I can't do that because of my upper limb. But I got to try at a much cheaper rate than I would have if I had gone out and bought everything and tried on my own. So I also got to try mountain biking with them. Same issue with upper limb. Like it just, since my left side's so tight, everything that I do, especially with an adrenaline rush, like my left side like immediately like tenses up and then I just fall over. Mm-hmm. But I still get to try all this, which is really fun. I went cross-country skiing like a week or two ago. That was really fun. I'm going to try that again because I only fell because I would get excited and then I fall But like my stroke side was fine with that. So I'm excited to try that again. Hiking, I love to hike. I love that I can hike again. My significant other and I, we go on hikes as often as we can, and you have seasons out here, so like it's not like just constant like rain or hot or like, and you get, I'm getting off tangents here, but I just want to go outside and play. That's all I want to do. Like that's all I want to do. Like I have 2 dogs now, and I have my significant other, and we just come out here and we just go outside to play, and we're in such a great area for it. And the NAC is just like such a good resource to like let me try it. Like I'm gonna try archery with them. I've never done it, but I've always wanted to try it, and so I'll do that, and like horseback riding and like all this stuff. And like my upper limb is definitely the constraint. But now that I have amputated my lower leg and removed that, I mean, there's so many new things that I can do, like so many things that I can do. And the amputation itself it's called an erdal amputation. I guess I should talk on this a little bit because I have had people reach out to me before about the amputation, stroke, all that. So it's an erdal amputation.
How do you spell it?
ERTL. It's not conventional. So conventional amputation, they amputate the foot and they leave the 2 bones, the fibia and the, oh my gosh, I really should have brushed up on this. The fibia and the fibia and the tibia, and they just leave them free floating. So they basically are just there to like tear up soft tissue. So what the erdal does is it takes one of the bones that amputated and it reconnects them. So they use tight line, it reconnects them. So I can like impact, like I have a stump that I can just beat, and I actually literally had to beat it with like rolled up magazines to desensitize it.
Oh.
But because of that, I can be more active than a lot of conventional amputees because I have that support in my stump. And with that, I'm able to go out and try all these things and not get like the skin breakdown as easily, and not get the phantom pains aren't nearly as bad as they can be. Phantom pain is a really common thing for amputees. I always feel the foot. My toes are always tingling. It hurts sometimes, but for the most part, it's just a phantom sensation. But the erdal helps avoid the phantom pain as well. I'm trying to see if I'm going off on tangents now.
You were just talking about why you're so active and how that particular amputation is helping you, because and you wanted to share that because people ask you about it.
Yeah, I have had quite a few people ask me about amputating their foot because of their stroke, and I'm never like, yes, do that. But I do share them my story because it's not the perfect solution for everyone, and it's not. I just got very lucky that my residuals were for the most part located in my arm and my foot. So like my left leg doesn't move as well as it did. Like I do have limited mobility and I do have limited mind and muscle connection, but it's not as severe as my foot was. So I have had so every time I talk to someone about it, I just make sure that they know that it's not necessarily going to fix everything. It didn't fix everything for me, but it did make life way better. And I strongly encourage thinking outside of the box for how to get your life back. I actually had a stroke survivor the other day reached out to me about amputating his arm because he saw how well I was doing amputating my foot. And I was like, dude, I would have cut that thing off. I would have asked for a BOGO if I could have cut that thing off as easily. But it's just really hard to replace an arm, unfortunately. So yeah.
You couldn't possibly have known how good a decision it was going to be to amputate a leg. I don't think you knew how much it was going to change your life for the better. You just wanted to get rid of the pain, and if that was gone, then that would have been fine.
Yeah, I know it was a huge risk. I mean, it was a huge risk. I owned a house in Nashville with the significant other at the time, and after we ended everything, I sold the house, and I paid off all my debt, all my student loans, all my medical bills, everything, just in case I made a really bad mistake and could not go back from it. So like I set myself up to possibly have to move back in with my dad and have him be my caretaker. I mean, I obviously didn't tell him all this because I wasn't going to like scare him, but like I set myself up to where like I was ready for the risk and I was ready for it to go wrong if it did, but every finger and toe and everything was crossed that it would go right, and it went right. So I got very lucky with that. Luckily.
Yeah. You sure did. You got lucky after being unlucky a few times.
Yeah.
So you know what? I think you deserved that, and you earned a little bit of luck and a little bit of things going your way. I mean, it's a great message to people listening that are going through a really hard time, because stroke makes things a bit worse. Even if you know the stuff you were going through is still there, and then you got to deal with stroke and everything gets compounded. So it's a great message for people listening to that. You know, there's better things to come. There is a light at the end of the tunnel. You can focus on what you want to do and what you want to achieve, and you can get there. And I'm just stunned at what you've been able to go through and achieve. And I just hope that you continue to do well and play, you know, go outside and play and have fun with your dogs and your significant other, and enjoy a full life, you know, whatever that means for you. I really hope that that's how it goes for you.
Well, thank you. I appreciate it. So far, it's been pretty good. If work would stop having to pay me, it'd be better. But go outside and play more. But I'm happy that I can still work and do everything that I wanted to do.
Yeah. Sarah, thank you so much for being on the podcast. If anyone wanted to reach out to you, I've got a feeling that a few people might reach out to you. On Instagram, what's your handle? Where are they going to find you?
It's Sarah Nickel. There's 2 underscores between Sarah and Nickel, and I don't have anything else besides Instagram.
Cool. I'll make sure that your Instagram link is there so people can find you as well.
Just keep doing what you do. You're already doing so much.
Discover how to heal your brain after stroke. Go to recoveryafterstroke.com. Importantly, we present many podcasts designed to give you an insight and understanding into the experiences of other individuals. Opinions and treatment protocols discussed during any podcast are the individual's own experience, and we do not necessarily share the same opinion, nor do we recommend any treatment protocol discussed. All content on this website and any linked blog, podcast, or video material controlled this website or content is created and produced for informational purposes only and is largely based on the personal experience of Bill Gassiamis. The content is intended to complement your medical treatment and support healing. It is not intended to be a substitute for professional medical advice and should not be relied on as health advice. The information is general and may not be suitable for your personal injuries, circumstances, or health objectives. Do not use our content as a standalone resource to diagnose, treat, cure, or prevent any disease for therapeutic purposes or as a substitute for the advice of a health professional. Never delay seeking advice or disregard the advice of a medical professional, your doctor, or your rehabilitation program based on our content. If you have any questions or concerns about your health or medical condition, please seek guidance from a doctor or other medical professional. If you are experiencing a health emergency or think you might be, call 000 if in Australia, or your local emergency number immediately for emergency assistance, or go to the nearest hospital emergency department. Medical information changes constantly. While we aim to provide current, quality information in our content, we do not provide any guarantees and assume no legal liability or responsibility for the accuracy, currency, or completeness of the content. If you choose to rely on any information within our content, you do so solely at your own risk. We are careful with links we provide. However, third-party links from our website are followed at your own risk, and we are not responsible for any information you find there.